Hello and welcome to the TechHub.training solution video for the Intro to Join Statements Challenge. This is a part of the SQL learning path or the SQL learning path, and if you haven't completed previous challenges, we encourage you to go back and finish those before beginning this challenge. Jumping right in, let's start by reading the instructions. As an overview, it says, "Welcome back to Precision Plain Parts. Today you'll be generating easily readable reports for your manager. Often in our database, we use primary keys and foreign keys to identify parts. However, people haven't memorized every part number or everyone's employee ID. Because of that, you're going to join tables in order to pull information from different tables. In this challenge, your job is to create reports to answer the questions found below." Our first question is, using the order table, join the employee table to show the name of the employee that created each order. Our column names should be order ID, first name, and last name. We'll select the columns listed above and make sure to identify which table they come from. Join order and employees table. And that should give us the information that we're asking for here. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up our Access database and create a new query. Remember, it will bring you to this window, but we need to come down here and hit the SQL button. So the columns that were requested were order ID, first name, and last name. The reminder was that we needed to identify which table they come from. So if we look at our entity relationship diagram here, we can see the orders table and the employee table. Order ID comes from the orders table, and the first name and last name come from the employee table. So we're going to go ahead and identify, if I can type this right, we'll identify this as the orders table. We'll identify this as the employee table, and this is the employee table as well. Now, we know that we need to join the orders table and the employees table. So the first thing to do is to find the common relationship. This diagram here makes it very easy to see. As you can see, the employee table is connected to the orders table on emp_order_creation_ID and employee_ID. So that will be how we join these. So first we're going to select it from orders, and then we're going to inner join on employee on, and this is where we'll need to pull that name back up. It's the orders dot emp_order_creation_ID is equal to employee.employee_ID. If we go ahead and run that query there, we can see that we have the order ID as well as the employee who created that order. And that's query 1. I'm going to go ahead and create a second query, and we'll go ahead and read our instructions. For query number 2, we want to know the company names that are listed as preferred vendors for inventory items and what our standard order quantity is. It tells us that our column names should be company name, inventory name, standard order quantity. And we will be taking that from the inventory and the vendor table. So let's go ahead and pull back up that entity relationship diagram. Inventory to vendor, we can see that the relationship is preferred vendor to vendor ID. So let's go ahead and join those. Then all right, so then we need to identify which tables these come from. We know the company name comes from a vendor table. Inventory name comes from the inventory table. Standard order quantity also comes from the inventory table. One thing I will point out here is we have been identifying the whole table name. However, we can go ahead and in the from line, go ahead and rename those variables or those tables as something different. So here I've renamed inventory as I and vendor as V. And instead of putting vendor there, we can just put V dot. And instead of inventory, just I dot. And same thing applies here. That way, just saves us a little bit of time and we don't have to worry about getting our spelling entirely right on all those tables. Now we can go ahead and run this and you can see we've got our company name, our inventory name, and our standard order quantity. Moving on to query number 3. It says we're trying to figure out our cost of goods sold for recent orders. What amount is payable for each order? So columns should be order ID and payable amount. Join the relevant tables. So the question we need to ask on this one, because it's not given to us, is which tables are relevant? And which employee, yep. So we're going to go ahead and start working on query number 3. Let's pull up that entity relationship diagram real quick. Columns that we need are order ID and payable amount. So as we look, we need the order ID, which can be found on the invoice table, and the payable amount, which can also be found on the invoice table. So in this case, it turns out we don't actually need to join any more tables. So we'll just go ahead and go select order ID and payable amount from invoice. And just like that, we got the same numbers. So sometimes it's not always necessary to actually join tables together. Sometimes we can actually get all of the information we need from one table. So moving on to query number 4, we are told that we need to find which employee received each invoice for orders in the database. Assume we only purchase inventory items from our preferred vendors. So we need to have the inventory name, company name, employee received ID, invoice receipt date. And we need to join 3 tables this time, the inventory, vendor, and invoice tables. So if we start, let's get those column names. We know that inventory name is going to come from the inventory table. Company name comes from the vendor table. We've used those both in the past. And then we will need to join a 3rd table, which will be the invoice table for those last 2 columns. You'll notice I went ahead and just put which table of these are coming from at the beginning, just because I already know what 3 tables I'm going to use, And this way I don't have to come back and make those changes later. So in our from table, we're going to have to do two joins. We'll join our first two columns, our first two tables together, and then we'll join a third table to those. In Access exclusively, you do have to put your first join in parentheses. So as you can see, I've opened that parenthesis, and I'm going to start with the inventory table. And then we're going to join our second table. So I've closed that set of parentheses, and we're going to go ahead and join our invoice table now. So as you can see, we've joined all three of those tables, selected our relevant columns, and this is the information that we get. You can see each of those orders that we've placed. So thank you for watching the solution video today. We hope we were able to answer some questions and that SQL is starting to make a little bit more sense. As always, continue through the learning path, and if you have any questions, feel free to check out more of the resources found in the other resources section of our page. Thank you. Have a great day.